Hello, everyone. Welcome to How Nonprofits Can Adapt Their Storytelling in a Time of Social Distancing. Whether or not we are practicing social distancing, it's uncertain times, it's still COVID times. We're in a pandemic. Now we are dealing with monkeypox, at least in Massachusetts. I didn't have monkeypox on my 2022 bingo card, and I'm not sure if you did, but it's a pretty exhausting and uncertain time for a lot of us, for many of us. So how can we still continue to tell stories, to advocate for our missions, and to create community amongst everything that is going on? Okay. So I want to invite you to join my program, Storytelling That Sticks. It starts next week. I only run it once a year. And this is the place where you're going to actually learn my storytelling system to collect, craft, share, and amplify your stories. It's a 4-part system, and it runs for about 5 weeks. And we have 1 week of implementation in between. And if you would like, let me get the syllabus for you. I should have had that pulled up because I have the 2022 syllabus. It changes every year. So I'm going to put that in the chat. And you can also, if you go to storytellingthatsticks.com, you can find the syllabus there. But this is going to tell you exactly what is involved. And I'm going to talk a lot about this later in the webinar, kind of at the end, about all the modules. But click on the link in the chat if you want to learn more about this and get the specifics, and also get the times of the trainings. Of course, you're going to get lifetime access to the recordings, lifetime access to all of the materials. So even if you can't make one of the trainings, don't worry about it. You will get lifetime access. All right. So today, how to adapt your storytelling strategy in the times that we're living in. Now, I sort of cut my teeth on storytelling and marketing for social change when I was in the Peace Corps. So I served in the Peace Corps from 2000, 2002, definitely showing my age there. But I was in Senegal and West Africa, and basically we were marketers. I mean, we were in charge of creating and carrying out these public health campaigns in a country that was completely foreign to us, but also in a culture that was completely different and completely new. And we were tasked with running these campaigns around either malaria prevention or STD prevention, maternal health, all sorts of different things. And what was so fascinating about that is we really had to do a lot of listening, a lot of research, a lot of investigation. There was a lot of, discovery. That's what consultants call it. But I did about a year of just listening, living in the community, learning, talking to people, understanding where are the pain points, understanding what they wanted to learn most, and doing storytelling, which is hugely important in terms of connecting with other humans. So researchers used to think that language was created to coordinate work or battle plans, but in his groundbreaking must-read book, Sapiens, Yuval Harari said that language was invented to tell stories. And since the dawn of time, storytelling has been used as a way for humans to comfort each other, debate issues, and form alliances. And I think that is really cool. And if you think about great storytelling, these are some of my favorite books. It definitely does more than communicate a message. It gets to the heart of how humans process information, and stories help us visualize how we can improve our own lives in the world around us. Popular stories and narratives define our culture, our values, and what we deem important. These are probably my 4 favorite books, and you can tell kind of how I think and what's important to me. And then the most important thing, I think, and the most interesting thing is that it's been scientifically proven that storytelling affects the brain in significant ways. And humans are much more likely to remember narratives than statistics and data. So not only do stories grab our attention and help us process information, we're actually more likely to remember stories. So I recommend any marketer, any fundraiser, to take a behavioral science or neuroscience course, because it is fantastic to understand what kind of messages really influence the brain. So the stories we tell create the world that we live in, and mission-driven storytelling does have the potential to change hearts and minds around complex, difficult issues. It can increase empathy and shift perspectives, and I think that's super important. Now, our unique responsibility here is to increase trust in institutions and brands, not necessarily in brands, but in nonprofits, because trust is at an all-time low. So the Edelman Trust Barometer is one of those studies that measures trust across the United States specifically. And in 2021, this study found that 50% of Americans, quote, do not trust nonprofits to do the right thing. And to me, that's pretty horrifying. So it's up to us to make the case that we're necessary. And this is what we do with storytelling. The content that we share should build a community of people who believe what we believe, who want to believe what we believe. And we have a moral obligation, I believe, to engage our communities on these platforms. So what can storytelling do? When I read a story, when I see a piece of marketing material or marketing collateral or fundraising appeal from you, I should look at it and say, this is for me. You know, people like us do things like this. This is something made for me. And our purpose here is to create a shared identity between the individual, the donor, and the cause over time. Because if we have that shared identity, people are much more likely to continue giving. They're much more likely to extend their gift, expand their gift, become a major donor, become, you know, a planned giver, have bequests and put us in their will and all that kind of thing. Donors want stories. This is what they keep telling us they want. So study after study after study has been done about donors and what kind of communications they want to see and to hear from us. And repeatedly, impact and success stories continually win. Yes, nonprofit news. Yes, upcoming events. Yes, campaign goal progress. Those are all important. But the predominance of what you share with your donors should be impact and success stories. So the stories we tell connect the dots for our audience and hopefully inspire them to be as passionate about our work as we are. And we know about the power and potential of storytelling to influence audiences and to persuade people to new ways of thinking. So why are common uses of storytelling so ineffective? Well, I think that we need to stop thinking of storytelling as a megaphone to promote our agenda. And you need to start thinking of it as a gift for your supporters. So what kind of stories should you tell? I'm just going to give you a few ideas. Stories that are intentional, stories that are authentic, honest, inspiring, stories that bring soul to the human condition. And there's many ways you can share these stories. You can share them on Facebook, like the Dravet Syndrome Foundation. You can share them in your email, like Save the Children does. You can share them on Instagram and also Facebook and LinkedIn, like Amira does. And you don't have to share identifying names and details. So Save the Children, they do share a lot of stories, but they always at the end of the email say, the names have been changed to, you know, protect our clients. And then you could take it a step further and do what Amira does, where they actually really never share faces and they never share pictures of their clients, and they talk in the third person. You know, it's time to celebrate. One of the women in our program just got a job. Navigating the hiring process is difficult and scary. We're so proud of her for putting herself out in the workforce and committing to the job search process. Help us congratulate and encourage this woman with a comment of kindness below. So you don't feel like you have to say, this is Julia and this is her age and this is where she lives and all these identifying details, because to create and share a great story, you don't have to do that. So I have an entire Google Drive of examples. I will put this link in the, oh, I stopped sharing. I will put this link in the chat for you. And these are all sorts of communications that I collected during COVID. And the reason I collected them is because they're not necessarily emergency communications, but they represent really the best kind of storytelling that you can do in a crisis, the best kind of storytelling that you can do when things are incredibly uncertain. And the world is always going to be in upheaval and be uncertain. I mean, I'm not sure there's ever going to be this mythical time when the dust is going to settle. Like we always say, oh, the dust is going to settle. Things are going to go back to normal. Things are going to do this and X, Y, Z. No, that's probably never going to happen. That I know that's never going to happen. So what can we do right now? We can talk about what is in a day's work, all in a day at Rosie's Place, working together in uncertain times. If you're anxious, what happens? We feel you, we see you, you know, what we've accomplished this year. What are some stories of hope? People really want to hear stories of hope, stories of resilience, and stories that give us faith in the human condition right now. Your response to this crisis is a prologue to a better future. And then another piece of this is asking people for their stories. So you could get as detailed as this particular ask, Canada Without Poverty. They really wanted to encourage people to talk about poverty because people's voices are critical in every issue. But they felt like having the everyday person's voice is critical to ending poverty in Canada. And they wanted to encourage people to share their video story. The key here is if you're asking people to participate, you need to give them clear instructions. You need to make it very, very easy, not a very heavy lift. And then you also have to give them some leading questions. So the questions here, what's your story? How has poverty impacted your life? Why does your voice matter to help end poverty in Canada? What's one thing the government needs to do to end poverty right now? Do you feel poverty is a violation of your human rights? If yes, why? So some leading questions for people. Now, Rhodes Scholar, they held a contest, The Story in 6, to celebrate the year of the grandparent. And they asked their Facebook fans to share stories about their grandchildren in 6 words. They received so many responses. They picked a winner and they published a lot of them on their Facebook page. So this might be something where you're just asking people for a really quick anecdote and you're getting engagement, and you can tell a story in 6 words. DNA doesn't matter. Adoption equals love. That tells the story to me in 6 words. Absolutely. So don't think that the length of the story has to determine the impact. And then don't stop storytelling, even when things seem impossible, even when all hope seems lost. So certainly you can go dark. You can go dark. You can decide you're not going to tweet, you're not going to email, you're not going to send out that appeal based on certain events, current events, things that are going on. Absolutely, you can do that 100% and be authentic to yourself and how you feel and your gut instinct. But what I don't want you to do is do what I said before. Wait till the dust settles. Wait until there's the perfect moment where nothing is going on in the world and there's no crisis, because that's not going to happen. So I want you to commit to make yourself visible, because your donors want to hear from you. They want you to be the go-to resource. They want to learn from you and to know what's going on, especially in the light of uncertain situations, because they want to know either how they can help or is there something they can do. When people feel helpless, nonprofits give them the providence and agency to do good. So even just sharing a happy story, a volunteer story, a mission moment, sharing something positive and something that's going to inspire me, even just doing that little task can really make a huge difference to people. Also, make sure you're explaining the problem. We can't assume that people understand the problem that we're solving, even if it's something like food insecurity or people experiencing homeless or violence. We can't assume that people understand the problem, because I come from a community that is predominantly white, predominantly upper middle class, and people still think that there are no problems here. And to me, it's just a matter of education. It's a matter of sharing statistics and data to demonstrate that, yes, there are urgent, timely, and relevant problems here. This is where storytelling comes in. And then you want to invite people in to help solve the problem. So look at the story that the Greater Boston Food Bank is sharing about Joe. He found himself unexpectedly unemployed. He turned to the Falmouth Food Pantry. That's a local town in northern western Massachusetts. And now he's back on his feet. And the story of hope, it's a story of hope. Make sure that you're not sugarcoating exactly what's going on. So Rosie's Place always is sharing these statistics. 1 in 3 women have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. And if you look at what Food Bank for New York City shares, 20% of New York City residents aged 65 or older rely on soup kitchens and food pantries. So this is making a case for the problem and then sharing a quote and sharing a story to help invite us in, to help create that emotional connection. Whereas the data and the statistics, they're going to catch our attention and they're going to help us think through logically, oh, this is a problem I need to pay attention to. But emotionally, the story and the photo is what's going to help me actually care. So captivating story building blocks. I talk a lot about this. There's an entire module on this inside storytelling that sticks, but we'll just touch on them quickly. Hook, character, stakes, details, and CTA is call to action. So what's the hook? Sarah's life turned around in one night. Here's how. And that's really the headline. And I feel like I took this picture from a magazine. Thanks to friends like you, Sarah's life turned around. If I died, who would come to my funeral? This is Plummer Youth Promise, an organization that I love and admire in Salem, Massachusetts. And what I love about this email, first of all, if I died, who would come to my funeral? That was the subject line of the email, got me to open it. Sometimes one of our young people says something that stops me in my tracks. Wow. That is, you want to read on because you want to know, what did they say? And then that statement, no child should ever have to wonder about the answer to that question. It's bringing us into the story. It's giving us context. And if you care about foster children, people in the foster care syndrome, as I do, foster care system, as I do, then this is going to resonate with you and really make you feel like, I want to help write the ending of this story. And it does have a happy ending. If you look at the news, look at stories in the news. If a nonprofit is in the news, it's never about their golf tournament. It's never about their gala. We all write and send press releases about every little event and every little thing that happens in our organizations. But what really gets the news coverage, it's going to be a story, and it's going to be written like this, with the hook, the character, the descriptive details, and the stakes. Looking around her new apartment in Lynn, 25-year-old Christina, who didn't want her last name used, can't believe how far she's come in the past 4 years. During that time, she's gone from jail to working full-time as a medical assistant and living with her 3 kids. And then it's the descriptive detail of tears streaming down her face. And it's the story of how this organization, through various job training programs, helps people get back on their feet. And it's actually really, really powerful. But that's what's going to get press coverage. And that's what people are going to remember. It's that compelling character. It's that story of, it creates empathy and it helps us contextualize the problem, something that seems so huge, like drug misuse and people experiencing homelessness and poverty and food insecurity. These issues just seem so big. How can we bring it back down to earth and individualize it and make it something that a person would really be able to understand or be able to relate to? And this is where descriptive details come in. The air was cold, and the longer I sat there, the more the chill cut to the bone. No longer human, I was part of the familiar landscape of this renowned city. The sea of humanity swept around me as I blended into the background with my cardboard sign. I mean, that's really descriptive. That time I almost died in Honduras. We have to go now. I don't remember who said it, but it made the reality of the situation hit like a rocket. I could only see the ceiling and a few heads bobbing around the room. That's something you're going to want to read, and it's going to make it it's going to make it easier to remember for the person. So the key here, the stories that you tell are the gold. You want to mold it into whatever shape that you need it to go into. So if you're telling it at your 50th anniversary gala in front of 500 people, it's very different than if you're telling it in an Instagram reel. So where you share your story depends on your goals and what do you hope to achieve and what does success look like? What do you want people to do? I mean, not every story is going to be a 5-minute YouTube clip. Some of them are going to be just a caption on Instagram. So where you share, how you mold that story depends on several things. It also depends on your target audience. Where do they spend their time? Which platforms do they use? What are they interested in learning about? Where are their knowledge gaps? It also depends on your capacity, of course. We need to be realistic here. How many of you are a department of one, or how many of you are a development / fundraising / marketing / grants / everything except programs person, which I've been in your shoes. So how much time do you have? What kind of budget do you have? Maybe you can only be on one channel. Maybe you can only send out one email a month. Maybe you can only do one video every 6 months. It just really depends on your capacity, your time, and your budget. So some of the best places to share, of course, your website, stories of changed lives. That could be something that you call some tab that you have on your website. Too many websites look like brochures, and very few websites that I see actually feature stories, whether it be your volunteers, interns, board members, staff members. There's so many people to pull from that have fantastic stories. If you can tell client stories, fantastic. But if you can't, there are so many other ways you can pull stories out. Try thinking about talking about the story from the first person. Moving into this place means freedom. It made me feel so good to move in. That's the Pine Street Inn. And they have these colorful, vibrant, happy photos on their website. What about in your email? Now, St. Jude's sends a weekly e-news with a featured patient story. And the story, it doesn't tell you the whole story in the email. You have to click over to the website because it's designed for this busy, fast-paced life that we live. It's designed for email. It's designed for people that are kind of designed for mobile. It's designed for people checking their email on mobile devices. Now, I don't read the email every single week, but once in a while I will read it, and they're usually very, very good stories. Now, Save the Children, what they do is so interesting with their email. They tend to share this photo with a text overlay. It's always the same format with the same red, the same font, and the same kind of visual, and then a little caption, and then you can read on. So it creates that trust, and I know what to expect when I see a Save the Children email. This is the Metro West Legal Services. Thanks to you, Hannah's safe with her father and will hopefully be granted legal status to stay in the United States. And you can see we don't have to share names, we don't share faces. And it's just a thank you. It's just a thank you email about impact. And it's a really simple ask to donate to be a part of writing a better ending. On social media, you need to keep things short and sweet, poignant, eye-catching, and have a specific call to action. So this is Oliver Cameron's first birthday. Their call to action is to like it and to leave a comment. That's the call to action. It doesn't necessarily have to be donate. If it is donate, you should be as specific as possible. Can you give $5 to help Fiesta and other animals like her? It's easy to make a gift today by clicking the donate button below. So be as specific and instructional as possible. Rachel spent years bouncing from house to house, always wondering where she would be the next day. And then if you look at this call to action, Rachel's just one of the many survivors we serve. Will you take a walk in her shoes? This is their annual campaign, Walk in Her Shoes. Your $25 will be matched and go directly toward her recovery. Sign up today. That's a very specific instruction call to action. Today marks the start of Carers Week. We spoke to young carers who bear the responsibility of caring for a parent. Now, the call to action here is to watch the video. It's raising awareness. It's encouraging people to like it and to share it. With Tatiana of Girls Who Code, it's really just a simple engagement. It's getting people interested, excited. It's helping people be inspired if they are going to participate. And I don't want you to stress about creating this perfect content, because done is better than perfect. Okay. Just document things. And a lot of the museums during COVID, when their doors were closed, they just documented what they were doing outside, or their gardens, or how they were creating art in their house. Document your donors, talk to your donors and get quotes from them. Figure out what they're doing and showcase the people that are making your work possible. This is really simple. When juvenile court professionals request assistance so their struggling families don't lose hard-made gains, we help quickly and responsibly. So showcasing your solution and what you do. And this is a stock photo. Using stock photography, use it pretty carefully, but you can still use photography and a quote in compelling ways. So what are the qualities of a stellar storyteller? I think that storytellers need to remain generous. You have to be vulnerable, and you have to take the time to understand your audience first and foremost. What do they care about? What do they want to hear? And all stories should be crafted and delivered with these elements in mind. I also think you need to prepare. Preparation is key when you're delivering a great story, but you should also not necessarily plan all of your content too far in advance. You have to have some white space. You should be able to improvise and not be so rigid in your delivery. Practice being open-minded, enthusiastic, and motivated, and then remain curious. So always be asking yourself the questions that your audience will be asking. How did that happen? Why did that happen? Why couldn't something else have happened? This is really what we ask when we see a lot of nonprofit stories. And it's so important for all of us to remain curious. Understand the context. Are you telling the story in front of a group of 100 people? Are you at a dinner? Is it during a Twitter Q&A? Where are you telling the story? And that's really going to help you frame it and mold the story to fit the context. That's a huge piece of being successful in storytelling. What information do I need to convey? This is the question that we are always asking as marketers. Okay, what do I need to tell people? I've got this event, I've got this press release, I've got this from programs, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. What do I need? What am I going to convey? Instead, I want you to ask yourself when you're creating these stories and creating these pieces of content, what questions do I want my audience to ask? Okay. What questions do I want my audience to ask? What do I want them to think? What do I want them to say? What do I want them to know? And what do I want them to think after they hear the story? The art of storytelling is your most powerful weapon in the war of ideas. I absolutely love that quote. Storytelling is a powerful weapon to counteract stereotypes, to counteract myths, misconceptions, misinformation. Storytelling is a fantastic way to shift narratives around a complex topic, to create empathy, to change hearts and minds. And I want you to know how absolutely powerful it can be when used across several different channels. Okay, so I'm going to go through my course. I want to talk to you about what's included and invite you to join. If you have any questions about anything that we have covered so far, please put them in the Q&A, put them in the chat. I would love to, sort of hear your thoughts. So if you're interested, I'm just going to go through the modules, the lessons of my course, Storytelling That Sticks. So the first module is setting up your story collection system. So you're going to learn how to set yourself up for long-term success, how to figure out the best types of stories to collect based on your goals and audience. Of course, everyone has different stories. We're going to create a storyteller's bill of rights to ensure ethical storytelling practices. We're going to set up a storytelling calendar, and we're going to talk about how to get buy-in from coworkers, supervisors, and board members. And this is the syllabus here. I put it in the chat if you want to look at the dates for that. The second lesson, crafting captivating stories that stick. And this is going to go in depth into those building blocks that we talked about, but also how to get people to take action and how to get people to convert when they actually see, read, hear that story, how to grab attention. And then this is one of my absolute favorites, how to get over this thing where you think you don't have a sexy cause, you do, or how to confront common challenges like confidentiality restrictions and exploitation. I mean, those are huge. So that's going to be in module 2. Module 3 is how you share the stories, how often, which platforms, how to do it, how to write it, how to use multi-channel online and off, filling out the calendar, how to create emails that inspire action, and then how to balance sort of creating all of this great content, collecting these stories, planning ahead with spontaneity, which I think is important. The fourth and final live module is how to spread stories, how to amplify what you're doing. Because once you have the system of collecting, crafting, sharing, you're going to need to reach out to other people to help you spread the stories even further. So that's like live streaming, storytelling ambassadors, visuals, video. This is where we get pretty technical into the tools and into the content creation. And, really ways that you can use social media specifically. We'll go through a lot of the different channels and show you how to use social media and email and your website and other digital tools, multi-channel tools as well, to spread the stories. Now, the bonus, there's going to be a bonus for you, visual storytelling in a digital world. And this is going to be specifically focused on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, how to reach younger audiences, how to stay relevant, how to drive donations with visual storytelling, and then some free and low cost tools that you can use to create these visuals. Some of my favorite tools, battle tested tools in my toolbox. There's a million bonus trainings, ebooks, guides, so much that you can use. It's all going to be in the platform inside Teachable when you sign up, and you're going to get lifetime access to it. So there's no time limit. You can really join you can join now, and then you can have lifetime access to it. So here's what you get: the 4 training modules with homework, training and coaching around ethical storytelling, weekly live study hall sessions. This is where we work together. We review the homework. We share what we've accomplished. We ask and answer questions. Of course, all of my checklists and worksheets and resource guides that are going to help you really take action. All of those on-demand bonus trainings, the Facebook group, you can be in that forever. I've had some students in there for a couple of years now. And then, of course, lifetime access to the course. Okay, so do people have questions about either about the course or about anything that we talked about today? I didn't see any questions come through. I'm just going to take a sip of water here. All right, well, I don't see any questions. Let me see. I'm going to look through the chat. You can ask any questions about storytelling or social media. I mean, you've got me here, you've got my attention, and I'm here for the next couple minutes. So I recommend asking questions right now. Katie says, for 2 people at an organization to participate, would the course need to be purchased twice? Well, technically no, but there's really only one email that will have the login. So you guys could, I guess, share that, but there'll only be one person technically signed up. But I do, I know that usually maybe someone, development director or something, shares it with a marketing associate. But there would be one person that would have the complete access and the login information, because you do need to create a login for that. But Katie, if you email me, we can try to figure out how that would work. I have had people buy 5 like licenses for it because they were kind of across all over the world. But if you're in one office together, it should probably work really well. Okay. Jesse has a great question. Thoughts on how to do good storytelling with limited staff capacity? Also, do you have ideas on how to make the case for storytelling to leadership when there are so many competing priorities? Well, I think storytelling is everything. So the competing priorities, yes, it might be actually doing the day-to-day of the program, but storytelling should be baked into any fundraising, any marketing that you do. I mean, it's just what humans want to see. It's what your donors want to see. So I think sharing data on the effectiveness of stories, and I think sharing data that say, okay, donors really want stories from us. Also looking at your data in terms of the content that you share and seeing which posts get the most engagement, seeing which videos get the most views, seeing which emails get the most clicks and open rate, things like that. And I think you're going to find that stories really, really do rise to the top. I actually have a blog post. I'm going to find it here. Hold on. I'm going to go to my blog. And I have a blog post that says how to convince your boss to invest in storytelling. There you go. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you because I do think it's important. Okay. Let's see. That's a great question. And then how do you do storytelling with a limited capacity? Just do what you can. So that's why you need to have a system. So figure out, maybe try to work like a journalist and look at where's the low hanging fruit? Like, do you have events? Do you have an executive director or a founder that has a great story? Do you have volunteers that have great stories? So look for low hanging fruit first, and then think about documentation, not creation. So where can you document things that are already going on? And maybe just creating a story that has like a quick quote, a quick quote. And you don't have to worry about all the captivating building blocks because it's not that long a story. But I think, a lot of people, especially my students, have the limited staff capacity. They're a staff of one, or they're a marketing department of one, or maybe they have half, part-time to do marketing and storytelling. But also see what you have already. Look at your grants, look at your event programs, look at all of your annual appeal letters, look at your reports. There's so much content that you probably have, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look at your website too. Linda says, we've always required a client to give signed permission for us to share their story. In the COVID area, that has created problems. I'm curious what other orgs are doing around this, or what are your recommendations? I would use something like DocuSign or HelloSign. So there's definitely ways that you can get virtual signatures. In the very first module, I give you examples of agreements for video, from agreements for minors, agreements for adults, and some, ethical storytelling in the Storyteller's Bill of Rights. But there's definitely ways that you can do it where you get the signature, can get the signature digitally. I don't think verbal permissions are enough. I'd be interested to know what other people do. I don't think that's necessarily enough, especially if you're going to use it for like fundraising or marketing purposes. They need to probably understand that. And they also need to understand that they have the right to revoke access at any time. Like if they don't want it, if they're looking for a job and they decide they don't want their story on your website or on your social media. So just make sure that they're protected, but you can use things like DocuSign, HelloSign, all of those kind of virtual contract software to do the signatures. So Annette says, not really a question. We often get told we need to tell more stories. We're just finding it hard to get people to share. We do seek out in various ways. We tell stories. We also need to make sure they match our goals. Strategic, but also being careful. We aren't just pushing info all about us. Exactly. I think it's really an art and a science. The other thing about getting people to share is that it can be very challenging if you just say, tell us your story. I think sharing examples of what you want, stories that you like, stories that you've seen, maybe some examples from this slide deck, and saying, I wish we could do more of this. How do you think we could do more of this? Or even just asking people a specific question, what's your best memory? What has been your favorite experience? What was the biggest challenge when you started here? Those kinds of things. Asking very specific, directed questions tends to help, but it often requires a culture shift. It requires a shift in mindset and a shift in, if your executive director has never wanted to collect stories before, it's going to be a huge shift in mindset and a shift towards collecting and crafting these stories. The other thing I would say is that it's not as difficult as you think. It just requires intention and strategy. I know that people think of storytelling and it seems overwhelming, but it really is just sort of collecting these little breadcrumbs that lead your donors and lead people along the path to learn more about the problem you're solving and the solutions that you provide. And you're never going to have one story to rule them all. You're never going to have one story that is like the be all end all that will talk about every single program and every single facet of what you do. So I think just doing the best you can to share those mission moments, those little anecdotes, to document and not worry about perfect creation. All right. Andy asks in the chat, do you recommend integrating the stories themselves in your newsletter, or would it be more strategic to have a read more button with a story teaser that leads your audience to your website? So what Save the Children does that I think is effective, and also what St. Jude's does, is they put a little paragraph of the story in the newsletter, and then they say read more, and it goes to the website. Because, but then Plummer Youth Promise, they do the exact opposite. They have one story in their email, and it's the whole email. So I would test it out to see what works. If you're sharing multiple stories, you probably want to click out to your website, because you want to make sure you're talking to your audience where they are. They're on their phones. They're checking their email on their phone, most likely. And people don't really necessarily want to read a 1,500 word, email newsletter. So I would test it out if you have multiple stories. If you just have one story that you're trying to tell and it's not that long, it's like 500 words and a picture, you could put that in an email. So it just really depends. I mean, both things can work, and I've seen both things work. But I would just test it out to see what works best for your particular audience. All right. These are absolutely fantastic questions. And let's see, I really want to save these questions because I think they're amazing. And I answer them all pretty much in depth in the course, but they give me some good fodder for future webinars and for, future course students. I love the not getting people to share, the signed permission challenging, and how to do good storytelling with limited staff capacity. I think those are really common challenges that people face. But thank you all so much for being here today. And like I said, I will send the recording. I will send the slides with the recording. It might be tomorrow. It might be over the weekend. I don't know. But I want to encourage you to have a fantastic rest of your week. Rest, relax, rejuvenate, whatever you need to do to, get through the week. And if you have any questions about the course, just let me know. Storytellingthatsticks.com, and it closes on Monday. That's when class starts. So if you're interested, email me or check it out before the week starts next week. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and be inspired to share stories. Thank you, Sarah. All right. Take care, everybody.